Hello Year 7 and welcome to your second lesson on this chemistry unit all about acids and alkalis. Before we get started, a few things. First of all, you need to make sure you've got a paper and a pen or something to write with. If you've not got those, then make sure you go and get them now, please. Also, this is the second lesson in this unit. So if you've not yet gone through the first video, make sure you stop this video now, go back and do the first one and then come back to this one, because otherwise some of the things that I'm talking about won't really make too much sense to you. So make sure you've done that first one before you carry on. So today's lesson is going to be all about something called the pH scale. And the pH scale is something very important in science. We talk about it a lot and you'll hear about it again and again as we go through the school. When you write down pH, you always need to write it like it appears here in the title. And that's because we always need to have a lowercase p and a capital H. It always has to be that way. So make sure when you're writing it down, you get into good habits of writing it that way. What we're going to do today then is we're going to learn about something called universal indicator and learn about how we can use that to classify a range of different substances. And in order to be successful with that, we're going to need to define what an indicator is. We're going to identify a substance's pH, and we'll learn about what that is later, and relate this to acidity. And we're also going to describe how substances can be tested with this thing called universal indicator. We're going to start off then with a little bit of a recap from last time, because we just want to jog your memory and make sure that you're happy with everything before we move on. So last time we learned that acids and alkalis are both very common chemicals. We find them in lots of everyday items. You'll have loads of things in your house which are acids and lots of things which are alkalis. And something which is neither an acid nor an alkali is known as a neutral solution, and you'll have lots of examples of those as well. Now, acids and alkalis can vary in their strength, so we can have strong acids and strong alkalis, and we can have weaker ones as well. Both of them can be very dangerous if they're not used appropriately. So you're probably quite familiar with the idea that acids can burn and damage the skin and things like that, but alkalis can do that as well. So they're things that we need to be careful with, particularly if they're quite strong ones. So you also looked last time at some examples of some everyday items, which are acids and alkalis. So some everyday examples of acids include lemon juice. Most fruit juices in general are acidic. Vinegar, and then hydrochloric acid is a pretty strong acid which you may have used in school before. We tend to use it sometimes in experiments, but it's also found in your stomach and it helps with the digestion of our food. Examples of alkalis include things like bleach, which is a relatively strong alkali, toothpaste, which is quite a weak one, unsurprisingly. Most cleaning products are alkaline, and then sodium hydroxide is another one which you may have come across in school before when you've done experiments and things like that. Okay, so your first little job that I'd like you to do then is you can see on the screen here various different pictures of some everyday items, and I'd like you to decide for me whether you think they are acidic, alkaline, or neutral. So using your knowledge from last lesson, which is which? So just jot them down on your piece of paper into 3 groups. Pause the video whilst you do it and then restart it when you are ready. All right then, so you should have had enough time there to try and sort those into your 3 groups. So let's have a look at the answers. So some of these you will have come across last lesson. So things like the shampoo is slightly alkaline, the lemon juice is an acid, and the bleach is also an alkaline. But some of them you may have found a bit more tricky. Blood is a good example because it's kind of weird to think that your blood is actually an alkali, but it is. It's a very weak alkali, so it's not a particularly strong one. Obviously, if it was strong, it might cause some problems being inside your body, but it is slightly alkaline. Milk is another one which is quite surprising, which is very slightly acidic. It's not a particularly strong acid, it's not going to burn your skin or cause damage to your eyes, but it is still an acid. And then we've also got some examples of neutral solutions as well. So we've got the salt shaker at the bottom. The salt is neutral, so it's neither an acid nor an alkali. And the icing sugar and the water are both neutral as well. Now with that task, you should be able to see that although there's some things that we just know are either an acid or alkali, it is sometimes very hard to tell if something is an acid or an alkali just from its name or just from looking at it. And sometimes it's basically impossible to tell which one it is. So I want you to think about why it's so important to find out if something is an acid, an alkali, or neutral. Why does it matter whether we know that or not? So again, pause the video, have a little think, jot down some ideas, and then I'll go through some of them. So there's two main reasons why it's important that we would need to know whether something is an acid, an alkali, or neutral. The first thing is safety. We've already talked about how acids and alkalis can be quite dangerous if we use them inappropriately. So if we don't know what something is, it could cause some damage. So it's very, very important from a safety perspective that we can work out whether something is acid, alkali, or neutral. The other thing is that if we've got this unknown chemical, we don't know what we can use it for if we don't know what it is. Is it going to be useful as a cleaning product? Is it going to be a good solvent that we can dissolve things in? Is it going to be used for something else? So those are the two main reasons. It's very important to find out which category something falls into. So it's actually fairly easy to decide whether something is an acid, an alkali, or neutral, because we can use special chemicals called indicators. And as you can see here, indicators are special chemicals which change colour in acids, alkalis, and neutral solutions. So for example, you can add a little bit of an indicator to an acid and it might turn, say, pink. If you add the same indicator to an alkali, it might turn blue. If you add it to something neutral, it might turn green. So it's very easy to see which one's which. Now there's lots and lots of different types of indicators and they all change colour in different ways. So they might have different colour changes depending on which solution it's in. And some indicators you can just buy ready-made, and we will use some of these when we're in school. But you can also make your own. And what I'm going to do over the next few slides, I'm going to explain to you how you can go about making your own indicator at home. All right, so normally when we're in school, we can make our own chemical indicator using a vegetable called a red cabbage, but you can do this just as well at home. If you have a go at this, make sure you take some pictures and send them to us in an email so we can see how fantastically you've done. If you'd rather not have a go at this practical, or if you don't have the equipment or you can't find red cabbage or anything like that, don't worry at all. It's completely optional, but it's something a bit different that some of you might like to try. So if you don't want to have a go at this, don't worry. Okay, so if you are going to try and make our red cabbage indicator, these are the bits of equipment that you're going to need. So first up, most importantly, you're going to need a red cabbage. It has to be a red cabbage. It won't work with a normal green cabbage, but you can buy them at the supermarket and it should be a fresh red cabbage, not the pickled version. You'll need a knife and a chopping board, bowl, hot water from the kettle, couple of teaspoons, some glasses or cups or something like that, and then some everyday acids and alkalis like the ones you learned about last time. So things like toothpaste, lemon juice, shampoo, soap, whatever you've got that's knocking around. There's nothing specific that I want you to use. You can try it with anything you like. Now, a few things before I explain the instructions for this little experiment. First of all, if you're going to do it, make sure you've got adult supervision. So don't do this on your own. Make sure someone who is an adult is there with you. Make sure during the experiment you don't eat the red cabbage, just the same as how we would do it in school. We should never have food or drink around in the lab. So make sure you're not eating the cabbage itself during the experiment. Take care with the red cabbage juice that we're going to be kind of creating. It will stain your skin and clothes. So if you want to wear an apron or something, it might be a good idea. Be really careful when you're using the knife, as you always should be, and then make sure you give your hands a good wash at the end when you've finished. Okay, so I'm just going to talk you through these instructions. Make sure you listen to my explanation thoroughly before you start. And then if you're going to have a go at this, just pause the video so you can see the screen as you carry on with it. So the first thing that you need to do is cut up some of the red cabbage into small pieces. Now you don't need very much, about a quarter or an eighth of the red cabbage is plenty, so you don't need loads here. You want to cut it up into quite small pieces, pop the pieces into a bowl and cover them with some boiling water. So you need to pour the boiling water over the top so it just about covers the red cabbage. And then you need to give it a really, really good mix with a spoon. And when you're mixing it, you want to try and crush the red cabbage a little bit with the back of the spoon. And that's so that you're getting all those chemicals out of the red cabbage. So you want to kind of really mush it down as much as you can so that you get all this liquid out of the cabbage itself. And you should see this kind of really dark purple coloured liquid that forms with the water. Once you've done that, leave it to one side for it to cool down a little bit and collect some of your everyday acids and alkali. So your things like your toothpaste, your shampoo, you don't need to go out and buy anything special, just the everyday stuff you've got in the house, but try and make sure you've got a bit of a mixture of acids and alkalis. Put a small amount of each one into a glass or a cup and mix it with an equal quantity of cold water from the tap and mix it really well. And that's just because obviously the toothpaste and things are a little bit thick and you need to loosen them down a bit before you can add the red cabbage indicator to it. Do that with as many substances as you like, just each in individual glasses. At that point, you need to add a few teaspoons of that red cabbage juice to the substances. Now I've said 2 to 3 teaspoons there, which should be plenty, but if you've got a massive glass full of your shampoo or your toothpaste or whatever, you might need a little bit more. 2 or 3 teaspoons will probably be enough. And you want to see whether it changes in colour. Write down if you see anything and then continue until you've tested all the different substances. So hopefully it will be fantastic if some of you saw some results that look like this. This is kind of the ideal set of results that you should see from this. So in the middle, you can see what happens if you put red cabbage into a neutral solution. So essentially it stays the same. It stays that purple colour that you started off with. If you put the red cabbage into an acid, so something like lemon juice or vinegar, you should see that it turns pink. Now, it might not turn as pink as you can see there in that picture, but hopefully you should see that the colour is different. Likewise, if you put it in an alkali, so something like your toothpaste or your shampoo or your soap, it turns bluey green. And again, it might not turn as green as that picture there, but hopefully you'll be able to see the difference. So what's excellent here and what's so good about this as an indicator is that it helps us identify unknown substances into one of these 3 groups. So it's fantastic there because it helps us see what is what. Now, red cabbage indicator is great, but it is not the only indicator that is available. And actually, it's not really the best either, because instead we can use something called universal indicator. And this is something which we use a lot in school. Some of you might have used it before in the past. This is what universal indicator looks like. So the version that we normally use in school is in the bottle that you can see there on the left hand side with the kind of squeezy pipette in the top. You can also get it in paper form, which is the same thing, but it's just the liquid is kind of embedded into the paper rather than being in a squeezy bottle. And then on the right here, you can see some of the different results that you can get from this universal indicator when you add it to different acids and alkalis. So I'm going to talk you through now how this universal indicator works. Okay, so on the screen here, you can see this scale of different colours going from red on the left hand side through all the different colours all the way to purple on the right. Now these represent the colours that you would see if you added a universal indicator to either an acid, an alkali or something that's neutral. But you can see this isn't like the red cabbage where we just had it's either pink, purple or green. We've got a much bigger scale here and lots of different colours in between those two at the end. So I'll go through and tell you what each of the colours mean. First of all, if you add a universal indicator to a solution and you see that it turns red, that means that that solution is a strong acid. If you add universal indicator to something and see that it turns yellow or pale green, that means it's a weak acid. If you add universal indicator to something and it turns green, that means that it's neutral, so right in the middle. If you add universal indicator to something and it turns blue, then it's a weak alkali. And finally, if you add universal indicator to something and it turns purple, that means it's a strong alkali. So this is great because not only does this indicator tell us that something is an acid or an alkali, it also tells us exactly how strong the acid or alkali is. However, just saying that something is strong or weak is not really very scientific measurement. So as well as just being able to say it turns red, it's a strong acid, we can also assign some numbers to this. And you can see there that each of these different colours represents a different number on something called the pH scale. You'll recognise that from today's title. If you have a strong acid, it would turn red with universal indicator, and this means that it has a pH of 1. If you have something which is neutral that turns green with universal indicator, this means it has a pH of 7. Something that turns purple with universal indicator has a pH of 14, and so on. It goes the same with all the different numbers. So a pH of 4 would be quite a weak acid, and a pH of, say, 11 would be quite a weak alkali. So these numbers help us explain a little bit more exactly what the pH of something is. And you can actually have decimal points as well. So you could say something has a pH of 3.7 or 8.2 or whatever number you want, really. So it's very important that you are able to use information both of the colours that universal indicator would turn and of the number on the pH scale to determine whether something's an acid, an alkali or neutral. So we're going to go through these now, and I've got on the bottom of the screen here some examples of some different substances. And what I would like you to do is consider if you added universal indicator to those substances, what colour do you think they would turn, first of all? And then what pH value do you think they would have? So again, pause the video now to write down your answers and restart it when you are ready. So first of all, lemon juice. Now we know that lemon juice is an acid from last lesson, but we can probably be quite confident that it's not a particularly strong acid because, we can eat it and it's not going to do us too much harm. So if we added universal indicator to lemon juice, we'd see an orange or yellow colour appear, which would give it a pH of probably between 3 and 4, something like that. So it's still an acid, but it's not super strong. Hydrochloric acid is that really strong acid that we find in our stomach and that we use sometimes in school. So if it's a strong acid, that means it's going to turn red with universal indicator, and that gives it a pH of 1. Pure water is going to be neutral, so it's not an acid nor an alkali. Therefore, it's going to be green and it's going to have a pH of 7. I've said pure water there because if you add different things to water, it can change the pH of it slightly. Bleach is a very strong alkali. Again, you talked about that last lesson. And that means that if you added universal indicator to bleach, it would turn purple, which gives it a pH of probably 13 to 14, around that kind of mark. And then toothpaste, we know that's also an alkali, but again, it's probably not as strong as bleach because you put it in your mouth and it's not going to do you any harm. So toothpaste would probably turn blue if we added universal indicator to it, and we'll probably have a pH somewhere between 8 and 10. Right then, so that's a lot of information that we've covered there, and just to sort of really fix it in our memory, we're going to finish off by having a go at a few of these exam style questions. So I'll read through it and then give you some time to have a go at the answers. So it says here, Matthew measured the pH of different soils. Tick one box in each row to show if each soil is acidic, neutral or alkaline. I've included the scale from the previous slide there to help you out a bit. Pause the video now, jot down what you think your answers are, and then restart it when you're ready to go through. All right then, so soil A, first of all, has a pH of 4.5. Now that's below 7, which means it must be acidic. Soil B is 5.5, that's also below 7, so that must be an acid as well. Soil C at 6.3, still below 7, so it's a much weaker acid, but it's still an acid. Soil D has that pH of 7.0, which is, as we know, neutral. And finally, soil E has a pH of 7.8. Now again, that's slightly above 7, which means that it's alkaline. Okay, that one may have confused some of you because it's still 7 point something, but anything at all that's above 7 is alkaline. So even though it's not quite 8, it's still above 7, so it would still be an alkaline solution. The only pH that corresponds to something neutral is 7.0. Okay, anything, even if it's only a tiny bit, anything over or below that is no longer neutral. Okay, so well done if you managed to get all of those right. Let's try another one. So this one is a little bit trickier, asks us to think a bit more carefully here about our knowledge. So a hydrangea is a type of flowering plant. You can see a picture of it there. And Matthew notices that the colour of the hydrangea is different for plants grown in different places. He records the he records the colour of the flowers on each plant, and his results are shown in the table below. So we can see we've got the different soils from the question before, and you've got different colours of flowers grown in those soils. Look at Matthew's results. Do his results support the statement that the colour of the hydrangea flowers depends on pH? A little bit of a tricky one there. Do these results show that the colour of the hydrangea depends on pH? Again, look carefully at those results, pause the video, write down your ideas and restart when you are ready. All right, so a little bit trickier here because it asks us to kind of think about those results and answer the question. But I would say yes, his results do show that the colour of the hydrangea depends on pH. Because if you look at the pH of the soils here, the more alkaline it is, the more pink it is. And the more acidic it is, the bluer it is. So for soil A, which is the most acidic of all of them, the flowers are blue. But for E, which is the most alkaline, the colour is dark pink. So it does show that the colour of the flowers changes depending on the pH. Right, last one then for you to try. A little bit more straightforward, this one. So you've got the pH chart at the top there and a table showing Michelle's results. So Michelle's tested various different substances with universal indicator to see what happens. All you've got to do is complete the table. So pause the video, write down what you think and restart when you're ready. All right then, so first up, the milk that she tested turned green, so that means it has a pH of 7. The rainwater has a pH of 5, which means it would turn orange with the universal indicator. The hydrochloric acid is red, so that would give it a pH of, it would probably be a pH of 1, but if you look at the table at the top there, anything between 1 and 3 is an acceptable answer. Bleach, it says there, has a pH of 11, which means it would turn purple. And that question's quite nice because it's got the information at the top there to help you. But based on what we've learnt today, you should also be able to fill in that table using just your own knowledge without the information there. Okay, so looking back at our first slide, we can see that our objective for today was to be able to use universal indicator to classify substances, and we can do that now because we know all the different colours that the different pHs turn. So if we look at our success criteria, we know now what an indicator is, the special chemical that changes colour depending on what type of substance it is in. We can identify a substance's pH and relate this to acidity because we now know what those different numbers mean on the scale. And we can describe how substances can be tested with universal indicator and know the colours that are representative of each different pH. So your job now, year 7, is to log on to Educake. There are questions there that you will need to answer based on this video. Make sure you email any pictures of your practical to the Cowley Science Department email address, which you can find on the website. And if there's any problems, then do let us know.